Thanks for joining us for yet another monthly AI webinar run by Academy XI. I hope you can see my screen. I will get going because I'm conscious of Ivan and his time, and all you folks who are probably spending your time listening to the two of us have a casual chinwag. Um, so without further ado, let's get going. So I'm coming to you from Naarm, which is Melbourne, which is land of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I would like to pay my respect to past, present, and emerging leaders and extend that acknowledgement to anybody who comes from a Torres Strait Islander or Aboriginal background, and as well as any leaders of the land from which you're working, playing, and living. So for people who don't know Academy XI, we're an education company. We've been going strong for about 10 years. And our mission is to transform the world through education. And we put a lot of focus on enterprise training, not just consumer, which many people think we focus on. And we have portfolio that ranges across business, technology, and design. And obviously, artificial intelligence is something that's close to our heart. We've been playing around with, and we've been building training and workshops for enterprise and the consumer space for quite some time. And hence, our monthly AR webinar is a goal for us to just raise awareness, educate, and have some really fruitful conversations. Hence, our esteemed guests. If you're really interested about AI training, by all means, jump onto our website or reach out to the Academy XI team. We do, awareness, fluency, prompt engineering, AI for business leaders, and we continue to sort of expand and explore different topics around artificial intelligence, Gen AI, and everything else in between. And we're here not because of me, we're here because of this lovely gentleman, which I've come to know over the past couple of months. So today we're going to be having something a little bit different compared to usually. Usually we have a speaker come in and have a presentation prepared. This time I thought I really want to sort of get to know Ivan a little bit more. And so we've turned this into a very casual fireside chat. Now, ignore the Growth Academy XI. Lindy's just joining us. We're just going to make sure everything's working well. Thanks, Lindy. But you can, put yourself on there. So who is this person sitting in front of me right now? So I'm lucky enough to come across Leonardo AI at the start of, the peak and growth. I've been using that tool for quite some time now, but Ivan has quite a diverse background. So he started as a project manager. He's been a part-time game developer and designer. He's had director roles for creative services and sort of consulting. He's worked for a company called Formations Technologies as head of their design and innovation. He's very lucky now to head up product and design at Leonardo.AI, and hence why he's got a bit of grey hair now, whereas probably last week he didn't. If you people don't know who Leonardo.AI are, Australian-founded Gen AI company, amazing work doing image creation, video, and everything else in between. But most importantly, the Australian Financial Review's Best Place to Work in the top lists. And they were recently acquired by Canva. So that goes to show the amazing growth. And in fact, one of the fastest growing Australian startups, I think, ever. So without further ado, I wanted to get a huge round of virtual hand clapping for Ivan for joining us. Welcome to Ivan. Thanks for the chat.
Thanks, Amir. Thank you for that intro. I was hoping you wouldn't notice the gray hair, but yeah.
It just makes two of us. No, that's fine, mate. Thanks for coming.
No, it's my pleasure. It's a
Right.
privilege to be here. Thank you for having me.
No, you're welcome. Well, listen, I was going to throw it your way. It's just to maybe just get you to give us a couple of minute introduction. Who are you? How your career started? Just to let the team know where you're at.
Yeah, how my career started. I guess it's a bit of a long journey. So Um, TLDR, I guess, my career as a designer really started with early days game development when I was 14, actually. And I feel like I learned a lot about just design and the industry from game development. And, the challenges you face in game development is that you have to do a lot with a very small budget and so on. So, I did a lot of 3D design early on, 3D Studio Max for those who remember the first version and the original book. And then after that, I was basically just thrown into agencies where I was just incredibly lucky to work with amazing creative directors like Gustav Grefrath, which I don't think a lot of people know, but he used to do amazing work in Trigger back in the day, long time ago. This is where the gray hairs are coming from. Um, and I was just, I learned so much from him, and I was surrounded by so many amazing people in a high paced, digital environment back in South Africa. So, spent 6.5 years there, worked crazy hours. And I feel like, you spend 6 years in an agency, you get 12 years of experience essentially. But, did everything from mobile TV streaming, video editing, doing quality assurance for big companies, working with telcos, large blue chips such as Cadbury, so on and so on. And then, eventually moved over to Australia, started working for a platform company that was acquired by a company in the US, and ended up leading a creative services team there. And it was interesting. I didn't really look at myself as a designer at the time, but I was leading creative services, and I noticed more and more that I was helping designers with design thinking, theory, approach, and solving these problems. And I remember you saying to somebody, I'm not a designer. And they would say to me, I've been designing my whole life and you're the most designed person that I know. And I'm like, huh, I was kind of taken aback by that. But, after 4 years of leading creative services there, I went to another agency. And as you can see, I love the agency land. I feel like there's just such a breadth of experience and projects and companies that you get to work with. It's a really great place to learn and pick up skills. So I spent another, 3 years at another agency working with companies, multiple companies. So at this point, I've worked with Atlassian, Dell, Juniper, Oracle, Trello, Google, in my previous company. And then I ended up doing, becoming like delivery and design lead at, another agency, Formation at the time. Really great place to get experience, and as well as working, then becoming the lead for design and innovation at Formation, where I, consulted with companies directly, worked on really, big NFT projects and some amazing projects that I'm not allowed to talk about. But yeah, just worked on a whole breadth of different projects. And I did some coaching with other heads of design, and that we would hire, and they would work with us with our different clients. And yeah, got headhunted by Leonardo, thankfully, and I'm just really really grateful for that, and for the opportunity to be at Leonardo. And it's been an amazing experience. It's been a wild ride. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you. It's funny, we both have a very similar background in agency world, and I 100% agree that your 6 years of agency world gives you 12 years of experience. And I think it sets a lot of people, especially if they're trying to get into the sort of design craft. But this is an AI webinar, so trust me, people, we will talk about AI. But I forgot to mention, by all means, use the chat for any, I guess, thoughts or anything anybody has to say. But if you do have questions, use the Q&A section, just so that I can then sort of trigger as we answer the questions, and it's easier to sort of maintain. But do that at any time. I can interrupt flow of conversation. I've got some loose questions for Ivan, but nothing set in stone. So please ask your questions. So, Ivan, you mentioned you love agency world and you worked in agency. So I guess the next question is from a segue of getting headhunted by Leonardo. What made you move across? Startup, sure, the AI space potentially sexy, but what was that trigger to go, hang on, there's something in this and I want to sort of have a go at it?
Well, I mean, I spent my career working in a lot of agencies, and working on a lot of different platforms. And I did spend some time working on a platform company. But kind of going back to my roots, to the 14-year-old me, and just answering that inner call of like, hey, you want to be in the creative industry, you want to do more things in gaming, and Leonardo was kind of, it started out as a gaming assets type of company at the time when I joined, and now it's evolved into this beautiful platform for all. But um, for me, it was my heart saying to me, this is a new path, this is a new journey, this is going to be interesting, this is going to be challenging, and I felt like I could bring value, I could help. And it's really about just listening to yourself and doing the things that make you passionate, because otherwise you just kind of get stagnant in your space. I actually had a really great job at the time, and it was a very difficult decision. And I had a kid on the way too, so it wasn't easy, but I just knew at the time, for some reason, that if I didn't do it, I'd regret it forever. And hindsight now, yes, I definitely would have. It's again, it's been such an amazing ride.
Amazing. So tell us, especially for people who are interested in exploring moving into sort of the AI field, what does working for Leonardo, how does it differ? Or does it differ? Or is it just another company building products that just happen to have a technology that just seems to be, at the peak of interest? Like, is there anything that people find interesting from, I guess, your experience?
Um, it's a good question. I mean, I think that the one thing that I would say is different about Leonardo, and potentially with the AI space, is the pace. I think that there are a lot of these fundamental structures in design, um, such as the double diamond approach, which can take a very long time, and can be time consuming, and it's really hard for you to apply all of these frameworks really efficiently and effectively at the pace of this industry. Um, so, I mean, I think that one of the important things is really to understand that being able to disagree and commit to a path is really important. It's very much about teamwork and not about doing things perfectly. It's
Mm.
you know it's not being afraid to try and fail, and this whole idea of, hey, we have to plan and have everything perfect. We have to have big groups to discuss everything before we do them and get everybody's opinion. You really just have to be able to jump in and trust your gut, trust your people, trust your team, and try things and fail, which is not. I wouldn't say it's seen as this is what's expected in the industry today, the status quo. I think it's probably the opposite, you know.
Mm.
And I think that is probably something that some people struggle with, and usually agency kind of to a degree beats this out of you. In agencies, you have to move fast, you have a small budget, you don't have the time, because you're usually working on uh, a rate of hours to charge to clients. So
Mm.
um, yeah, so I mean, I think that kind of works very similarly in the AI space, because if you don't move fast, if you're not able to move, yeah you're
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 stuck
going backwards.
behind everybody else. Yeah.
Yeah, there's something about, yeah, if you're not moving forward, you're going backwards. Um, and I think that really makes sense from the point of view of in this sort of space where you do need to experiment, knowing that there's a likelihood of failure. It's there, right? If you're going to fail fast, you fail often, all that sort of stuff. But you mentioned the word, I guess, trust your gut. Um, when it comes to sort of like intuition, especially as someone who's come from a creative background, have you had to change and shift your let's say which gut do you listen to, the creative gut or a data-driven gut, or have you had to sort of change some of your ways of thinking or the tools and frameworks to use because, like you said, this is moving so fast and the technology is still so new?
um I think that, yeah, this is an interesting question, and I think it's a strange one for me, because I've always kind of assumed that I was never good enough as a designer. I So much more to learn. There's so much more that I don't know, and I think that anyone who's really good at their craft knows how much they don't know, and then they realize there is so much more to learn, and I don't think I'll ever feel otherwise. Um, And for that reason, I've always created frameworks to help guide my decision making rather than to trust myself. If anything, I have frameworks because I don't trust myself, to catch myself from trusting myself. And some of these things are things that you'd expect, like the crazy eight framework, where you force yourself to do 8 iterations of something before you jump in. Some of these things are more fundamental, like really breaking down what you're trying to do or why you're trying to do them, and understanding if the thing that you have in your head is a how or a what or a why. And then it's important you do that, because then you realize, oh, I'm stuck in solution mode. I need to go back into thinking about what the problem is and understanding the problem. So but when it comes to trusting your gut, it is really the ability to say, we are going to go down this path, and it may not be perfect. For anybody who paints, that when you paint, you gain experience in the first 80% of your painting, and then the last 20%, which takes usually the longest, you're fine tuning. But when you start something new, you're gaining more experience. So there's this lesson in painting, that do your paintings to an 80% completion while you're learning, and then start anew. Don't fiddle forever
Mm.
in perfection. And that's essentially it. Is just rather have a bunch of rules and frameworks to protect yourself. Make sure you understand the problem that you're solving, and ask those questions. And then don't be afraid to commit. And of course, if your founders or executives want to go in a certain direction, be okay with that. Set in things to measure the impact of that and question it later. But it's really not blocking movement. Movement is the most important thing. It's better to make a mistake together as a team than to block everybody because we're trying to be perfect. That's really bad.
Sounds like it's pragmatism at an extreme level, right? Like you said, the 80/20
Yeah.
rule, right? The 20% take 80% of the effort, 80% take 20% of the effort.
Yep.
Um, it sounds like, and I'm lapping all this up because this is a design leaders and design practitioners. This is what we do, right? Like being okay with ambiguity, having frameworks to support because we don't know everything. Do you agree that having a background in design, I've just written in my little whiteboard here, HCD, is it a superpower? Like, is it the fact that you've got a background in design? Well, as much as you say you have, but practice some of those frameworks and tools that, agency work. But do you think that, human-centered design frameworks is what's allowed you to be okay to move at such a fast pace, be pragmatic, and know those tools will help you continue to move forward?
um i I mean, I don't necessarily think it's only because of experience. I think it's, um if I'm being honest, my opinion on the matter is rather that it's a mindset. And sometimes I guess as designers, ego even getting in the way, and being aware of your ego, which is a hard thing for anybody, because ego is just, it is a part of us. It's a part of how your brain works. And we're all proud of what we do, and as designers, more than any other role, people look for that wow moment. You want the wow moment, and it's kind of getting away from looking for external validation. And I know this is getting pretty deep and vague here, but this is really how I put this forward. It's about being better than the you from yesterday, and every day figuring out how can you learn, as opposed to trying to get external validation as a designer. Because when we as designers want the wow from our peers every time we put a design forward, that is what's going to give us energy, or to make us feel sad, for lack of a better word. So I mean, I really believe that if you combine that with an understanding that, we are a business, we are a company, and this is not about you. It's not about making yourself feel good. It is about moving the company forward and having that discipline. And then putting your ego aside and saying, I might not have the best solutions. Let's trust some frameworks and some thinking, and let's put that out there and let's measure it. I don't think that specifically you need to have a design background necessarily. I think you just need to have the discipline to practice these frameworks and make it part of your day to day, whatever those frameworks are for you. But it simply comes down to really understanding the problem. One of my favorite quotes by Einstein
Mm,
was, he would spend, if you had 24 hours or something like that to save the world, he would spend 23 hours understanding the problem or something like that.
mm,
So I really resonate with that, because it is really the fundamental part of design. And I think that moving fast, in my opinion, again, is not just jumping in and just designing and adding the thing in there, but just asking, hey, why are we trying to do this? And what are we trying to achieve? And even getting a little bit more into the technical space, and trying to understand what's actually happening here. Because sometimes you might just realize that it's not even worth doing what you're doing.
mm, mm.
So really long answer. I don't even know if I've answered your question, but
No, no, no. It's
yeah.
100%. I think what you've said is that it's not about having a design mindset, but just having that mindset that we need to like I've written the word here, don't lock movement. So we need to constantly be cognizant of it. We need to move forward, but doesn't necessarily mean just throwing solutions at, spending a good enough time still in discovery, good enough, like I was like, the 80-20 to
Hmm.
explore. Do you find, given the pace of change in the Gen AI space, you're having to do that at like a super speed compared to if you just work for any other product company? Or do you think, like any startup agnostic of AI, this is typically what's going to happen regardless?
Ooh. Um, I mean, I definitely can't say that all companies are the same. It would be ludicrous. There are definitely differences in companies, and I think the AI space is extra pressure, because not only do we have to move really, really fast, where you're solving problems that haven't been solved before. Um,
Yeah.
so I mean, I do think that, depending on the company that you're starting, I think if it is a startup, yes, you do have to move fast. But if you're joining a startup where these problems have been solved, it's quite easy for you to go and find similar design systems and products that you can learn from. It is really when, and I think this is why this role really resonates with me, is a lot of the problems that I had to solve in the past for agencies, I had to understand a business within very little time, understand their technical complexities, and then figure out how can I help them within a very tiny budget. And you know for those reasons, that's why a lot of these frameworks exist, is how do we do good work really, really fast. And that resonates really well with the AI space, where these problems haven't been solved, and you don't know if it's going to work or not, and you don't have a choice. You need to get something out right now. And so it's the idea of like, hey, we have this new feature, we need it designed yesterday. It's kind of like that. So yeah.
Yeah, interesting. And so, look, it's a good segue, Ivan, to the next question around your designers and your design process. Like we chatted this about this a little bit, but like, do you feel that your design process has changed or practices have changed or evolved now that you're working for a Gen AI company, and with Gen AI tools?
I think that there are definitely processes that we've adjusted and shifted because of help of AI. And I think this is kind of what you'd expect to see in most companies, using ChatGPT and LLMs where it makes sense. From a design perspective, we haven't. I wouldn't say that we've incorporated a ton of AI into our design processes, because they haven't really been at the maturity level to
Mm,
have the full context.
mm,
And I think it's this whole idea of like, hey, is will AI make designers obsolete and whatnot? And I think it's a really interesting question that I think that with enough time, it's possible. But anything is possible with enough time, right? But in the current state of the industry, there is a really big need to understand context and big picture thinking, as well as how do humans use things. We're designing things for humans by humans.
mm,
So there's definitely best practices for things that have been solved, but it's really hard to get AI involved to solve these current problems that we're facing, because there literally is no context or data right now.
And how do you then balance that? Because now this is conundrum, right? Like you're saying, you're moving really quickly and you got to go quickly, but you're trying to address problems where there's no existing patterns. How do your team solve for that? Like, like what is that? What is that?
I mean, I guess um, it's really having foundational frameworks that I guess
Mm.
we don't believe in the status quo. We don't believe just doing things the way that it's always been done before is the right way. We don't believe in doing unnecessary admin when it's not needed. We try to do only the right amount of admin, and of course we steal a lot from game development methodologies. Start really low fidelity. If you're if I can make an example from game development, when
Mm.
you're building your first prototype, you just have a bunch of boxes running around on the screen, and it's like, okay, cool, this is working. Now let's do another iteration and make the boxes slightly nicer. Let's add a little bit more. And it's really trying to instill that in everybody, because the lower fidelity, the faster you can talk and align, even up to our CEO JJ, which he's wonderful to work with, because he doesn't care. He doesn't want to see things perfectly. Um, you know, the faster we can align in a direction, the less time is wasted for somebody just doing all of these high fidelity designs to move things around unnecessarily. So, I think that's probably at the heart of it. And then also just doing some very basic fundamental steps that we all kind of agree on to really understand the problem, do some basic information architecture to figure out like what are the different things that this depends on and how will it impact everything else. And then kind of like what I was saying before, doing things like crazy eights. Just let me just get all of the different ideas, really try to get different ideas out there. If I can't get eight, that's fine. But just
Mm.
have a first stab at it, understand the problem, understand what are all the other pieces that come together. And then yeah, just get aligned really, really quickly, even if it's on a napkin sketch. It doesn't have to be in Miro, it doesn't have to be
Mm.
in Figma. Just yeah.
No, fine. Keep it out. Yeah, listen,
Mm.
and I think you've to some extent answered one of the questions come through is how do you balance pushing product innovation with relying on established strategies in an ambiguous environment? I think you're dealing with the ambiguity through keeping it lo-fi, doing exploratory work like crazy eights, doing just enough discovery. I think, yeah, it's just the fundamentals, right? Sure, the speed might be faster, which means you probably have to then be more reliant on these tools because we know these tools work, these frameworks work. Like you mentioned the word information architecture, it's music to my ears, Ivan. The last time I had any UX or product designer even know what information architecture looks like or how to design for it, like from your card sorting, your tree jack testing, it's like a lost art. But the HCD toolkit's been around for a long time, and I think those things can definitely help. No, thank you for that.
100%. I mean, I might just weigh in on that. It's definitely one of the things that I've noticed. More and more designers that I've met in my career are just not aware of how helpful and useful it is to, especially if you're dealing with bigger picture thinking. To do this more often. In fact, I don't believe we do this often enough, even in Leonardo. And of course, I can make the excuse and say, we're moving really, really fast, but it definitely helps you and your entire business, because it stops you from causing what I call functional debt. We talk about technical debt all the time, but we don't really talk about functional debt, which is essentially we've built this Frankenstein monster of a feature set because we're just doing design by story. Hey, here's a story. Let's design for that in isolation. And we don't do these like big picture information architectures to map out what the potential future looks like in addition. And we don't draw that on a napkin sketch before we go into you know uh, high fidelity designs for the feature of the MVP feature set. And I really think that just causes a lot of impact to development down the road. I truly believe that design has a pivotal role to play in the speed of delivery in any company by doing this sort of risk mitigation, essentially.
Love it. Yeah, design as a risk mitigator, right? It's something that we always talk about as a way to sort of elevate the value of design. Thank you. Now you mentioned something which sort of opens up a can of worms potentially, right? This whole notion of, a designer is going to be out of a job. So and I don't want to spend all time on it because I think that conversation has been done to death. But the whole notion of creative control versus, the ethics aspect of things. Um, this notion of human creativity versus machine creativity. Has your philosophy or your opinions or your beliefs changed since you've joined Leonardo and amazing things that it can produce? Has it made you step back and question, well, hang on a second, there is an inflection point here that I need to sort of consider?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I guess this changes every day.
Yeah,
I
right.
think I think anybody who can definitively say it's going to go this way or it's going to go that way, I feel like it would be a wild guess. What I can say is I continue to be impressed at what it can do, and the way that we as people are putting these tools together. Because even if AI doesn't improve from where it is today, just the fundamental tool set that we already have and how we can put it together will enable us to work in completely different ways in the next 10 years, even if it doesn't improve, and it will. And in terms of that aspect of human creation versus machine creation, um, I think that's kind of part of why Leonardo exists, and it's part of my personal mission as well. Is how do we make these tools more human, I guess, or that's probably a poor way of saying it. But if you look at something like Midjourney, the early kind of idea is you type a prompt and it spits out an image, and people go, "Oh, wow, that's cool." But you never really felt like that was you. You didn't feel like you were, you can post online and say, "Oh, look at this amazing image that I've created," but you didn't really feel truly proud of it. Or I don't know, maybe maybe some people did. Um, with Leonardo, the whole point was to give people more control, and that remains our mission. Is we want you to be able to create something and have the controls to do it, and the AI tools are there to help and collaborate with you. Can we do a better job? Yes, we absolutely can and want to and will. But I really believe that at the end of the day, the one thing you can't replace is how we as people interact with other people. And at the heart of design, that's all it really is 9 out of 10 times you're not designing something for an AI interface. That's I mean, that's essentially just an API interface. But we design for people. And it's the same as the whole door handle conundrum. Don't put a handle on the door if you can't pull it, because then people will pull it. We're designing for people. So I think with enough data, AI will do a really good job at designing for people. But solving new problems potentially will still need the guidance of a designer. And being emotional beings and AI not being emotional beings, they can be trained on data on how to react, but it's all data that we would have to give them. And I find it hard to think right now, and I'm probably going to be wrong in 10 years, that
Mm.
AI would replace that emotional connection between people, and which is a part of the design philosophy, I think. um anyway, again, probably wrong, but
We
we'll
don't
see.
have we don't have a magic 8 ball to guess, but yeah, I think regardless, we know that the space will change. People's roles will change. Like I know there's data in ABC that says 23% of roles will change, not disappear with the onset of
Mm.
AI. I think we just kind of have to constantly evolve and move forward, and new roles will get created, new ways of thinking. And I don't want to turn this into sort of a ethics masterclass, but have there been times where you or your team have had to make some maybe put the brakes on some things that you thought maybe it was a cool feature, but it had some like there was in this sort of hovering around that gray area of ethics, or is that something that you just like leave to, I guess, your risk and legal team to sort of assess? Like, where do you play a role as a design head?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, we try to avoid any kind of like in the platform. We do have certain moderation layers for preventing the creation of bad content, if you will, whether that is people trying to do deep fakes or, more harmful content. And, the truth is that, with any of these platforms, it's, people who want to do bad things will, they'll find a way. Um, so we work really hard at improving that as a company. But from a design perspective, are there features that would, when we build it, we kind of question, is this okay or not okay? And I think it's more often than not, it's kind of a direction where we empower the user to use the tools in a certain way, and we have policies to avoid that. Um, a lot of these decisions are essentially based up to the company and the company's direction, but we don't really see ourselves as, um, hey, we're going to be creating something that um, is good or bad. We're rather saying these are the tools that are out there in the world right now, and people don't have access to it. People don't know that it exists. People don't know how it can be used. You have to download these models to use them on your machine. But these technologies are out there, and it will innovate the space. It's like driving a car. If you drink and drive, that's not by design of the car.
Mm.
You shouldn't do that. So we definitely don't want to drive negative behavior as much as we can control it. At the same time, it's challenging when these models are so incredibly powerful that you could potentially do anything with them. Um, so yeah, it's an interesting conundrum. Yeah, for sure.
And when you talk about models, right? LLMs take sometimes years to be trained up, right? And then fine-tuned. And for Lano, like Leonardo, in their short time, you guys have probably been training those models before you even started the company, for example. Um, Talk to me about the intersection of design and like, do you, your design team, how close do they work with your, data scientists, engineers, more around the core model of the platform as opposed to interface?
Well, I mean, the model in itself is trained by our AI research team, is what you will. And a lot of these models are trained, outside of the day-to-day conversations of the rest of the team, just because of the complexity and the work that goes behind the scenes into it. So where we get more involved from a design perspective is more on the, I guess, on the output testing and tweaking and quality of the outputs. So for example, if we would add a feature that would be like referencing a character or a face in order to build some characters or a story, or you want to turn yourself into, a superhero or whatnot, we would go and do some more testing on some of the outputs and have a look at that. And I would spend a bit of time at looking at the different outputs and saying, hey, this is probably not there yet. These are the inconsistencies that I spot. So, sometimes, just having that design eye, if you will, over the work, because not everybody notices the same level of detail. And you have different people from all different places doing that. It's not design specific. But as for the actual, building and training of the models, not really. And again, it is that whole noise reduction kind of conversation of, is it helpful to have more people in the mix? But we do share a lot of these open channels in the company where we just show and share some of the things that are happening. But I wouldn't say we're actually very directly involved in the model training from a design perspective in a team. It's more about, how can we use these things? How can we use these types of tools? So models would be one small piece of the puzzle. There would be these things called LoRa's, which you can train a LoRa against a style on top of a model, and do interesting things with that. All the way from training it on a set of clothes to training it on a set of styles. And then there is another layer of image guidance that you can add at runtime to help guide. And then, of course, you have prompting and style prompting. So it's more about understanding how these different tools work and how you could leverage them, and thinking about, how do we make this as easy as possible for the user without removing their ability to explore. We don't want to remove the joy of discovery.
Mm.
um and yeah, so that's kind of more where our focus is.
You're using some beautiful words, don't remove the joy of discovery, giving control back to the user. Um, I was going to ask you, in terms of what's the one thing that has either delighted you or surprised you when designing for a Gen AI tool? Have you had to try something really new or invent something that you even think about 2 years ago?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, all the time, I guess, is the answer.
Oh,
Um, but yeah, I think one of the recent ones was flow state, for those of you who have tried flow state, and the idea to just rapidly iterate with image generation. And I had this idea in my head of being able to click on view more, but then having these little breadcrumbs at the top that you can navigate and switch between. And I really liked the idea in my head. And there wasn't anything like that at the time. So we did a quick prototype for it, and it just felt so intuitive to a human being using it. Like, I mean, I still think that we can do more to make it better, but um, compared to other tools that had similar experiences out there in the market, it's just we just thought about it in a slightly different way, and we went and we built it, we tried it, and it really resonated with our audience.
and then, and regarding audience, right? When we talk about the customer adoption curve, you often have your tech literate, innovators and early adopters are often the first to jump onto a new tech, right? Your
Mm.
what we call early majority and late majority, which is the majority of your market, take a little bit longer, and plus your laggards. Are you still in a phase where you're designing for the literate people who understand Gen AI and do it, or your goal is to try and design for the lowest common denominator at the moment?
Very interesting question, Amir. It's I'd say our mission remains to not dumb it down. I think people are smart and more clever than we often give them credit for. Even if they don't know the tools. So I do believe that intuitive design is really important, and that's why a lot of those frameworks are just necessary, especially the information architecture. Like I feel like that's the heart of intuitive design, if anything. Just context. Um, but so if you always think about intuitive design as what you want to achieve, it doesn't really matter what your tool can do and the depth. So the philosophy that I have, at least for Leonardo, is that there's no point in making a tool that is so simple that it's not worth anybody's time learning. You don't you don't sit around and say, "I wish I was better at prompting." You say, "I wish I was better at Photoshop." Right? And Photoshop's complex. It's really complex and it's powerful. But that's the type of thing that you'll invest time taking a course on. Now, some people might take a course on prompting, of course, but up until the AI revolution, you'd have a lot of people saying, "I wish I was better at Photoshop," or and so on, because there's value in learning those tools. So I do believe that there is a beauty in depth that is important.
And I think it's the way to just get that human interest is to show that value upfront and earlier, right? Because if they don't have a value, they won't commit the time to learn it. Like Photoshop, through, I guess, word of mouth and seeing imagery and seeing amazing art be created, people go, "Oh, I need to learn Photoshop because the value it has." So it sounds like similar to you is, and which is again, it's the basics, right? If the people find value in something, they'll put the time and effort and commit and give something of themselves, be it money, time, social
Mm.
status, or whatever to do it. Yeah, like
Mm,
that's really interesting because
I agree. Mm.
look, and the reason I'm asking that is I'm constantly frustrated, Ivan, by seeing lots of tools who go, "Hey, we've got AI," and all it is, they just grab a text prompt and shove it, or text field, and just shove it somewhere within the AI. I go, "There we go, we have an AI tool." And but I don't think about, that design pattern is not necessarily suitable for that user at that point in time doing that jobs to be done task. Um,
Mm.
and so I guess, yeah, I would just, are there any pitfalls? And you've talked about just basics, KZ8s, prototype, and so forth. Is there any other pitfalls that you think designers, product people, even engineers need to just be wary of, not to like the trap to fall into?
Um, I think that the one pitfall that I've kind of seen a lot of people fall into is the idea that these things can just do anything. So it kind of goes back to the philosophy of what I was talking about earlier is, there can be a culture of people getting really excited about the space, and you have designers who are not looking at the tech and really understanding the tech that come up with these ideas, and they would design something. Oh, sorry. They would design something and present it and say, "Hey, look at my cool idea." And it kind of goes back to we're looking for recognition externally, which is something that I always recommend, we look at within ourselves, whether you're a designer or not. And the idea is that, if you don't understand the tools and you're designing something and you're putting something forward, it looks like a cool thing, but everybody who validates that idea can see that it's not real. It's not, we are not ready for it. Our models can't build this. We are not set up as a company to do that. So um, I think that some companies are set up to really innovate in this space. And I think some companies want to, but if your entire business is not set up to do these types of things, then maybe your only choice is to put a prompt box on your page, and
Mm.
that's okay, because it's better than doing nothing. You're trying, you're getting involved, you're making mistakes. That's okay. That's the whole point. Is don't be afraid of mistakes. But it is also important to really understand what your company can do, what your tech can do, and yes, push the boundaries, of course. But if you're putting an idea together, and you're like, "Hey, we're going to do this cool thing where you just click there and the whole, everything changes."
Magic.
Wow! And you present that to a larger audience without, talking to a team to really understand the feasibility of that. Not only is it feasible right now with what you can do as a company, but is it cost appropriate? Like, what will it cost, and what's the compute cost for something like that? If you don't do that, it's kind of uh, you know irresponsible design.
Love it. Yeah, interesting. So as you were talking, you triggered another question in my head. And by the way, for the audience, I've gone a bit off script as well, but I was doing a great job. Um, you know how I use a physical product. But the first the Google Glass came out. Obviously, it was feasible because they managed to build it. Sure, they didn't quite tick the desirability, hence they said let's put it out of the market and see. And then learned quickly that sure, they can even make it viable by the pricing, but the market wasn't ready. Right now, you look at your Meta glasses with Ray-Ban, the market is a little bit more ready, wearable watches, all that sort of stuff, right? People come through a little bit of a journey similar to that sort of customer adoption curve I talked about. Um, have you come across anything within Leonardo where you guys have built like you've come up with an idea to how to solve a problem? You know it's feasible because you're working closely with engineers that you've just said. But you put a pause go and you're saying, I'm not sure the user's ready for this. Is that a thing in a sort of this fast moving space?
uh I think we are lucky enough to have the timing right, where people are curious and they want to see new cool ways of us doing things. So I think that we're, I don't remember who the study was by, and I regret not remembering who it was, because it was such an incredibly interesting study, and you could probably look it up. But there was a study done to say, what is the main driver of success in different companies, and one of the number one things was timing. And just like with the Google glasses and Meta glasses and all of that, I really think timing is a is a big player, and also, the maturity of the tech, of course. Do we have the right and small enough, CPUs and GPUs at the
Mm.
time for the tech? But we there was this one feature in particular that is always interesting to me. It's the real time canvas, and I don't know if you've seen it, where you're drawing and it like paints a picture instantly on the other side. And at the time, we went to Vegas, and I demoed this on one of the big screens, so people would walk by, and I would just be drawing on it so people could see what's happening, and would just stop people in their tracks and go, "Whoa, what is that? That looks incredible! Like, can I try? Can I?" And it wasn't perfect, but it would just create this moment of excitement and joy, and just fun.
Mm.
And I think we forget that, because as a feature in itself, it's definitely not our most used feature, but the amount of excitement that it created, and people just wanting to try it and try something new, and how open and eager people were to try these new things, was surprising to me. Because I'm used to thinking, from other agencies and other companies that I've worked in, I've solved a lot of problems that weren't solved. I've worked on a lot of NFT type projects where the tech is new, but um, I feel like people were less ready for NFTs and crypto than they are for the AI revolution. People are really open to new ways. So I can't really say that we've had too much pushback. If anything, we've kind of doubled down on experimentation, if anything.
It's funny you talk about NFTs and crypto. The reason for me is the reason for the lack of adoption for the majority of people is because they were developed by engineers. Like for someone until recently to trade in crypto, you'd in effect have to either think about what a mining of a crypto means, set up accounts. NFTs, like to look at a piece of art requiring you to log in and go through a bunch of rigmaroles to just bring a piece of art. It's just so counterintuitive, so not human-centered. I think the difference between Gen AI and those technologies is this is had the, I guess, the opportunity. It's easy enough because it initially started with a single text prompt. Everybody knows how to type. So there was no inertia or the friction to learn it. Like the barrier to entry was much lower. And I think,
Mm,
like to your point, just design hasn't been an afterthought. Design has been very much upfront and in the space of Gen AI tool creation, which I think led to, I guess, making those tools easier for everybody to be able to engage and adopt. So yeah, I think as a testament to not just you, but I think just this space that we live in. We're about to wrap up. So
yeah,
I'm going to do
definitely.
some quick chats with Ivan. Well, we've only had one question, but please throw your questions in there. So, Ivan, some quick ones. What's your one favorite AI tool at the moment? And it can't be Leonardo because that's a given.
Really throwing me under the fire here. um, Look, I personally, I think that the new Gemini model is great for coding, and is somebody that likes game development. I've been playing with that on the weekends, to test out its capabilities in game development. So for coding, Gemini 2.5 is incredible. But as an overall tool, ChatGPT, and all the paid versions of these LLMs, I think that if you don't have one,
Mm.
you're missing out, and you should be practicing one of them. But I really like Perplexity. They've been around for a long time. I don't want to sound like I'm, sponsored by them, but I just, if you're looking for a free LLM, like Perplexity just seems to give you better overall results and research, as opposed to, the vague answers you kind of get. I think all of these models will catch up, but uh, I really do like Perplexity overall.
Yeah, great. It's funny you talk about the free tools. The one that I tell people to play around with is pi.ai, so PI, because it's just a very much a conversational LLM that it just allows people to sort of get a bit of flavor, especially for my mum. It's like my mum's blown away at the fact that she can talk to someone, even though that someone is not a someone. Um,
Yeah.
a couple of questions coming through now. I do have a couple for you, but still, this is a really interesting one by June. Will Leonardo, or do you think any Gen AI tool, image creation tool, get to a point where they can start to create sort of vector-based output, so then you allows the creator to have a level of, I guess, control over then customizing that output? If you can share.
Yes. I mean, I think the ultimate answer is yes. I mean, and it sounds somewhat that you're also talking about, like, multimodal as well. Like, are we? I mean, I guess if we, I think that you're going to get to the whole conversational idea of, hey, create something for me. Okay, I want you to modify it in a certain way. Okay, let's turn that into an image. So not only do I think that that is definitely coming for pretty much any platform out there, whether it's Leonardo or not, any type of image generation or design platform. I also think that it's going to be able to allow you to create your own um, setups, if you will, where you can say, "Cool, I really like this thing. Do it again,"
Mm.
and
Yeah, I
then
love it.
prompt me for adjustments.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm looking forward to it. My buddy Mark Oliver's jumped on and he's asked a question here, and he's saying, "My LinkedIn feed's pushing language about the fact that AI's biggest differentiator is for enterprise is speed, right? Faster to test the hypothesis, etc. It feels like it's a misdirection. He thinks the impact on organization and its workflows is that it's forcing processes to become more youthful, not useful, but youthful. Um, Speed
Mm.
or growing young again is something that him and I have talked about. What's your thoughts on that, the whole notion of getting companies to sort of becoming younger through this technology, or is it all about speed at the moment?
Hmm. I mean, yeah, there's like, I mean, I think that any company that isn't looking for opportunities to improve their workflows with AI would be eh, falling behind really, really quickly.
Mm.
I think every company should be doing that. And I mean, in terms of like, youthful, it's really hard to say. Ultimately, the there's not enough like there's not enough context in these models to simply replace um, humans in a lot of these different things. I think that if you have a very, very basic skill set where your whole skill set can be replaced by AI, um, then I guess the question is what would we do to enhance that? How can you take AI and improve your workflow? And I do think that there is a lot of fear mongering out there for sure. And it's kind of guerrilla marketing tactics to a degree where people, fear-based marketing or fear-based news is, really big, and that's how you get your clicks. But I do agree that it is kind of misdirection. And at the end of the day, it it comes down to value, and you can have this conversation as many ways as you want. Are you adding value to your business is the question you should be asking yourself, what everybody should be asking yourselves. And in fact, it's not just a question of just design, it's a question of every job in the world is, how can you add value? And if there are AI tools that can help you provide value faster, use them.
Mm.
you know
Mm.
um it so I think it's really important that none of us are ignorant of new technologies and really are open to them and think about, how can we use them? How can we use these tools to um, strengthen what we spend our time on as humans? Because we're not great at data crunching or doing the same task over and over again. So how can we use these tools to improve that? Um, as for my opinion on what it does to companies, like, I don't really think it matters.
Yeah. I think it's a good timing. Oh, there he is. He's back. I thought I'd lost you for a second. Uh,
Disconnect for a moment.
thanks, thanks, Ivan. I think, look, that was a really good point to finish on, right? Which is the basics of, like, you need to add value to the business, to your end customers, to your users. Without that, I guess there's no point having a business. I'm going to ask you one final question. It's not an AI question, but you dropped something on me at the very start of our chat when we're just getting to know each other before the call. You said you've got French royal bloodline. I want to know what that is all about. It's 30 seconds
I
or less.
uh according, and I don't even know how true or not this is according to the research on it, but apparently somewhere there is French royal bloodline in my family's ancestry. I've no idea how that works being South African and having a British family being the other half of my family. So a bit confusing to me, but yeah, apparently we were descendants of the last king or something like that, which was ended during the French Revolution, as far as I understand. So I
So
don't
you
know.
might have a castle, you might have a castle attached to your name at some point. Maybe you get an amazing inheritance you don't know.
Nah, nah. I'm simple folk.
Awesome. Thank you, Ivan. Thanks everybody for joining us. That was really great. I think there's so much for me to unpack here, but we don't have enough time. But wanted to say again, thanks again for Ivan for your time. It was so good to catch up with you again, buddy. And please stay in touch with us. If you want to reach out to Ivan, you can find him on LinkedIn. But we'll, if it's okay with Ivan, we'll look to sort of either share the video or snippets of the video and reach out to Academy XI if you've got any questions around sort of your AI needs and training. So um, thank you, Ivan, and thanks everybody else for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much, Amir, and thank you for doing what you guys are doing just to help people out there. As Amir said, happy to try and respond to as many people as I can. My LinkedIn's a bit crazy, but I genuinely am passionate about helping designers and get designers into the industry and find their way.
Love your work. Thanks again.
Take care,
Talk to
everyone.
you. See you, buddy.
Bye.
Bye. Hello, everyone. We've got a few people joining us slowly, so we'll just let people join in. And while that happens, I'm going to start the recording. Oh, the recording was already happening, wasn't it? I heard that. Yeah, fantastic. Awesome.